Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It is another, as referenced earlier by Member Robinson, it is a beautiful day in West Grey for sure. I'm Deputy Mayor Tom Hutchinson and Chair of the Adjustment Committee meeting here. Item number one, we're going to be calling the meeting to order. This is the June 14th, 2021 Committee of Adjustment meeting. We do have quorum, as identified with the committee members' logins. For this meeting, we're using both audio and video. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the West Grey website at www.westgrey.com. The technology for this meeting is being managed by the West Grey staff. Please refrain from clicking buttons throughout the meeting unless prompted. Before we continue, I'm asking Supervisor Cody Hewlett to provide an overview of some of the other key points for this meeting. Supervisor Hewlett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, if you get disconnected at any time, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the meeting ID for this meeting, which is 891-9652-3908. Both members of staff and members of the committee have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hands on camera physically to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance throughout the remainder of the meeting, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, and I will attempt to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. That takes us to item number 2, that is the purpose of the meeting. Clerk Scharbeck, please provide your comments.
Thank you, Chair Hutchinson. Sorry, just getting unmuted there. The purpose of today's meeting is for the Committee of Adjustment to receive and review, consider applications for minor variances, as well as applications for consents to sever. Various members of the public are able to attend and have the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regards to those applications. A public registry for each application is available by email. You can email Mr. Hewlett at khewlett@westgrey.com. So that's KHEWLETT@westgrey.com. And if any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on this application, they're to provide their name and mailing address on the corresponding registry. This will also entitle one to be advised of a possible local planning appeal tribunal hearing in the event the decision on the application is appealed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. That takes us to item number 3, and just before I go, I just wanted to acknowledge that Planner Spencer has signed into the meeting. Item number 3, this is disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Members of the committee, is there anything you'd like to declare at this time? If not, you can declare it any time throughout the meeting if one should arise. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4. That's the approval of the minutes. This will be the approval of the minutes from the May 17th, 2021 meeting. Recommendation, Clerk Scharbeck, could you please read the recommendation?
Through you, Chair Hutchinson, the recommendation is that Committee of Adjustment minutes of May 17th, 2021 are hereby approved as circulated.
Thank you. Could I get a mover for these minutes, please? Member Robinson, are you moving those minutes?
Yes, it's Member Christine Robinson, and I am moving approval of the minutes.
Thank you. And Member Hutchinson, would you be seconding those that recommendation for the minutes?
Member Hutchinson, in the minutes.
Thank you. Is there any comments or questions from the committee members on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, if you could just raise your hand. I see all committee members are in favor and none opposed. The motion is carried. Okay, So we're moving right on to item number 5, minor variance application number A11, 2021, McEachern. 5.1, application number A11, 2021, McEachern. And that takes us to 5.2, and this is Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, if you could please read the recommendation and include your comments on 5.3 and the written comments, including 5.3.1. Planner Spencer.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The committee received Planner Spencer's report and the recommendations that application A11 2021 be approved. Written notice of the application and electronic hearing was sent to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, and notice was posted on site in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose and effect of this application is to vary the provisions of section 6.1.3 and 6.1.42 to permit the height of plus or minus 7.62 meters and a total floor area of approximately 146.3 square meters, or a maximum building height, total floor area of 5 meters, and a maximum floor area of 92.9 square meters for accessory structures is permitted in accordance with the zoning bylaw. The effect of which will permit the construction of an accessory structure on the subject lands for storage purposes. These lands are located at 313040 Highway 6. The lands are legally identified as half of Lot 5 and Lot 6, Plan 155 in the geographic township of Normanby. The parcel is approximately 971.21 square meters in size. It contains a single detached dwelling unit and an accessory structure. At the present time, storage containers are contained on the property on a temporary basis. Confirmation from the property owner has been provided, and these will be removed following the construction of the proposed building. The property is located southwest corner of Varney and Highway 6. The lands in question are identified with being within a secondary settlement area, and under the county official plan and the residential of West Grey official plan, the lands are in accordance, being accepting of the uses that are proposed. Comments have been provided by the County of Grey, Planning and Development Department, and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, of which no concerns were identified by commenting agencies or the public. Planning staff have no concerns with respect to the intent of the maximum floor area provision, as well as the maximum height provision in this case. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to advise further. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. That'll move us to 5.4, and this is under verbal comments. There's 2 sections to this, the committee members, and then we'll go to the public. 5.4.1, it's excuse me, committee comments. Committee members, is there any comments or any questions that you would like to ask at this time? And I do acknowledge Member Townsend and be followed by Member Hutchinson. Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only question I have has to do with a reference made by the county that MTO approval may be required. And I think I read later that there was no change in the entranceway. The entranceway is actually off Varney Road. So I'm assuming that wouldn't be required, but I wonder if Planner Spencer could please clarify that there is no intent to come out of that property onto Highway 6. In fact, the entrance will stay on Varney Road, at least to the best of our knowledge.
Planner Spencer. I'm not showing Planner Spencer on the main screen here, so just bear with us a moment, everyone. Supervisor Hill, could you confirm if Planner Spencer still signed in?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Planner Spencer is still signed on to the meeting. However, it is showing that her audio is muted. I believe she just unmuted herself.
I am here. Sorry about that. It's just unfortunately glitchy. With respect to the Ministry of Transportation and their comments, the entrance is not proposed to be on a Ministry of Transportation highway. They will still require a permit from the Ministry of Transportation, and that is the expectation of the owner to undertake that process.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Member Townsend?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering why that's required, Madam Assessor, just in what more is a learning curve than anything else?
So that is, if I may, through you, Mr. Chair, that is a requirement just with the expectation of the proximity to Highway 6. They always have comments with respect to that regard within certain proximity to their actual provincial highway. The intent is for the provincial highway to have limited access, so they always will have a comment with that regard.
Thank you
Follow
very
up,
much.
Member Townsend?
Yeah, thank you very much. I do live very close to where they are, so I do appreciate where they're positioned and how close they are to Highway 6. Thank you.
Anything further, or was that?
No, that was all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Member Hudson, my only concern, I don't have any concern with the building. My only concern is that there are seems to be a number of sheds and storage facilities on this lot. So hopefully this larger garage will help clear that up a little bit. It looks like there's at least one garage, if not two. I just can't remember whether, I think there were some other forms of storage there. Yeah, I'd be a little concerned with if there's, there's trailers and sea containers and other storage things there that maybe could be cleaned up and moved into this building just to help with the aesthetics of the property. So that would be my only concern. Thank you.
Is it just more of a comment than Member Hutchinson, or are you looking for some? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Member Robinson, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you, Chair Hutchinson. And it's just to further on the comment that was just raised by Member Hutchinson. And that is with regard to the trailer and sea containers located on the property. Within the confirmation correspondence from the owners / applicants in this particular item that we're on, Planner Spencer, has there been a time frame committed in the correspondence for the removal of those additional structures? Thank you.
Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Confirmation has been provided by the property owner that they will be removed. It's not a question of a timeline. I don't have the authority to impose that at this point in time. It does become a bylaw enforcement issue. I do understand they are allocating those specific accessory structures to store things that are going to be posed into this new accessory structure that they're asking the request for. In terms of a timeline, I don't have one. If they continue to have those accessory structures on the site, I do have email confirmation from them that they will be removed, but I don't have the authority to require them to do so unless it becomes a nuisance and bylaw enforcement needs to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anything further from any of the committee members before we turn the conversation to the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to 5.4.2, members of the public. There's two parts to this portion of the public meeting. So the first part is we'll be reaching out to anybody that would like to speak in favor of the application. And when we've completed that, if there's anybody, that would be followed with anybody that would like to speak in opposition of it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Supervisor Hewlett to just give us a quick rundown on how members of the public can participate, and to also advise if we do have anybody, if you've received any correspondence or if anybody would like to speak in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public wishing to speak during this portion of the meeting may do so in one of two ways. The first being, if you have joined us over the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will notify us that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if you have raised your hand in error, you can press *9 to lower your hand. For members of the public who have joined us using the online meeting software, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, either stating your comment or just stating that you would like to speak, and we can have you unmuted at the chair's request.
Thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. At this time, do you have anybody who'd like to speak in favor of it, or have you received any correspondence?
At this time, I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak, nor have I received any correspondence.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. We will move on to the second portion of this, and that would be anybody that would like to speak in opposition. Again, Supervisor Hewlett has briefed us all on how you can participate. And Supervisor Hewlett, do you have anybody wishing to speak in chat, or have you received any correspondence?
Mr. Chair, at this time, I'm not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak, nor have I received any correspondence.
Okay, thank you. So we will move on to 5.5, and that's the decision of the committee. And I'm going to be looking to the committee for direction on which way how they'd like to handle this application. So I'll be looking for a mover. I see Member Townsend. Go ahead, sir. You're on mute, Member Townsend.
Sorry, it didn't click. Yeah, I'd like to move that the West Grey Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application number A11 2021 for McEachern for the reasons set out in the planner's report.
Thank you. And I see Member Robinson's hand up. Go ahead, please.
I will so second. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Sharbuck, could you read the recommendation before us, please?
The recommendation is that West Grey Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application number A11 2021 McEachern for the reasons set out in the planner's report.
Thank you, Clerk Sharbuck. Comments or questions from the committee members regarding the recommendation? Seeing none, we'll call the motion. All those in favor, if you could raise your hand. I see all members are in favor of this and none opposed. That motion is carried. And we will go to item 5.6, and that would be next steps. And I will call on Clerk Sharbuck again, please.
Through you, Chair Hutchinson, the next steps for the applicant is to get through that 20-day appeal period provided for in the Planning Act. And after that time, they can proceed with their building permit.
Thank you, Clerk Sharbuck. All right, so we're moving to item number 6, minor variance application number A13 2021 Barfoot. 6.1, application number A13 2021 Barfoot. 6.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation as well as 6.3, including written comments under 6.3.1. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the committee recommendation is that the committee receive Planner Spencer's report and the recommendation that application A13 2021 be approved. Written notice of the application and electronic hearing was sent to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, and notice was posted on site in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose and effect of the application is to vary the provisions of section 6.142 and 15.25 of the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw, which will permit a maximum floor area of about 120.6 square meters and an exterior side yard setback of about approximately 6.09 meters, whereas a maximum floor area of 92.9 square meters is permitted and an exterior side yard setback of 7.6 meters is required, the effect of which will permit the construction of an accessory structure on the subject lands for storage purposes. The lands are municipally identified as 126 Forest Creek Trail within the Forest Creek subdivision. The lands are legally identified as Lot 13, Plan 1097, in the geographic township of Bentic. The parcel is approximately 1.08 acres in size and does contain a single detached dwelling unit. The lands in question are designated rural within the County of Grey official plan, and the lands are zoned estate residential within the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Comments have been provided by the County of Grey and the Conservation Authority, and the county requests that the landowner try to minimize the amount of tree removal on site to construct the accessory structure. The intent of the floor area provision, specifically as relates to accessory structures, is to ensure that the main use of the property is the principal use and not accessory structures. In this case, that would be the single detached dwelling unit. The intent of the exterior side yard setback is to ensure that appropriate sightlines are maintained for ingress and egress to the property, particularly where daylight triangles for corner lots must be considered. In this particular location, the subject lands are on the corner of Pine View Drive and Forest Creek Trail. The single detached dwelling unit has direct access to Forest Creek Drive, whereas the proposed accessory structure will have access from Pine View Drive. Planning staff are satisfied that the reduced exterior side yard setback and the height increase will not create a sightline issue relative to the intersection of Pine View Drive and Forest Creek. Planning staff are in agreement with the approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. It takes us to 6.4 verbal comments. 6.4.1 committee members. Committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions, provide any comments before we turn the application to the public. And I'd be looking for any of the committee members, apologize, that would like to speak to this or have any questions. Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see there was consultation with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, but I don't actually see a response from them. I wasn't sure if that was inadvertently omitted or whether or not they had nothing to say. I wonder if Planner Spencer could respond to that, please.
Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. There has been comprehensive review of this plan of subdivision through the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority in the association with the development of these lots. So in essence, they did comment only to the respect to refer back to the subdivision plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any follow-up or any
That
other?
was my only comment.
Okay, thank you, Member Townsend. Any other comments or questions from the committee members before we turn it to the public? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to 6.4.2, public comments. There's two parts to this portion of the public meeting. First one is to speak in favor of the application, and that will be followed by any that would like to speak opposed to the application. And I'm going to ask Supervisor Hewlett to please provide an overview on how members of the public can participate. And then if you could let me know if there's anybody that you've received any correspondence like to speak in favor, if you have anybody in chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public wishing to participate in this portion of the meeting may do so in one of two ways. The first being if you have joined us using the phone, you can press *9 to notify us that you would like to speak. That will raise your hand. Alternatively, if your hand has been raised in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. For other members of the public, if you have joined us using the online meeting software, you can simply send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, either stating that you would like to speak during this period or stating what you would like to be read for the record. Just taking a quick review, Mr. Chair, I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak, nor have I received any correspondence.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. That takes us to the second part of this public meeting, and that would be anyone who would like to speak in opposition of it. Supervisor Hewlett has provided the details on how you can participate, and I will check again if anybody is in the chat or if you received any correspondence. Supervisor Hewlett.
Mr. Chair, I have not received any correspondence, nor have I received any members of the public wishing to speak at this point.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We'll move along to 6.5, and that's decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? And I do see Member Hutchinson's hand up. Go ahead, Member Hutchinson.
Member Hutchison, I'd like to recommend that West Grey Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the minor variance application number A132021 Barfoot for the reasons set out in the planner's report.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Member Robinson, are you seconding this?
Yes, it's Member Robinson here, and yes, I will second this motion.
Thank you, Member Robinson. Clerk Sharbeck, could you read the recommendation before us, please?
To you, Chair Hutchinson. The recommendation, the resolution moved by Member Hutchinson and seconded by Member Robinson is that West Grey Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application number A13-2021 Barfoot for the reasons as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you, Clerk Sharbeck. Comments or questions from the committee members on the recommendation? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, if you could signify by raising your hand. I see all members of the committee's hands are raised and none opposed. That would be motion carried. That takes us to item 6.6, next steps. And again, Clerk Scharbeck.
Through Chair Hutchinson, next step for the applicant is to proceed through the 20-day appeal period. If no appeals are received, then the decision of the committee is final and they can proceed with their building permit.
Whoop. Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. Just lost my pencil. I'll get another one. That moves us to item number 7, minor variance application number A14 2021, Piercy. 7.1, application number A14 2021, Piercy. And 7.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation, including 7.3, and written comments, including 7.3.1. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is that committee receive Planner Spencer's report, that application A14 2021, and the recommendation for approval of the minor variance, and further that a non-service agreement is approved by council in order for the landowner to assume complete liability for the use of an unopened and unmaintained road allowance. Written notice of the application and electronic hearing was sent to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, and notice was posted on site in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose and effect of this application is to vary the provisions of subsection 6.10 to permit development on an unopened, unmaintained municipal road, the effect of which would permit the construction of a new single detached dwelling unit. The subject lands are currently identified as 143 Helena Street in the village of Ayton. The lands are legally identified as Lot 2, Part 2, Plan 153 in the geographic township of Normanby. The lands in question are identified as a secondary settlement area under the County of Grey official plan. The subject lands are zoned R1A, unserviced residential, within the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Comments have been provided by the County of Grey, the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and Enbridge Gas. County staff has stressed the need for a non-service agreement to be registered on title to the subject lands as a result of the location on an unopened and unmaintained road, similar to the comments provided by planning staff locally. No further concerns were identified by commenting agencies related to this application. The intent of provision 6.10 is to ensure that development occurs in locations where safe access can be ensured along a roadway that is maintained to an acceptable standard for use of the municipal equipment and emergency services. Although staff are generally not supportive of this type of development, provided a non-service agreement is required, planning staff are satisfied that this application can be approved. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Planner Spencer. Moves us to 7.4, verbal comments. 7.4.1 is committee comments. Committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments you may have regarding this application. And I do acknowledge Member Hutchinson. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Member Hutchinson. So, yes, I see that the landowner has to assume all liability. I'm just curious. Seems to me we've had other people come forward on this this road allowance, asking to build or to access. I see there's a new house at the end of this, and for this property to be developed, they would obviously have to do some clearing some trees on the roadway. It looks like to be able to access the property. I'm just curious why wouldn't we open up that road and make it an accessible road, just like the other streets that are in Ayton, so that people could develop? To me, it just makes sense that if we're going to create new houses, that's going to be a benefit to us, benefit to Ayton and all of West Grey. So I don't know if our infrastructure director's on or not, but I'd be curious to know if that would be something that we should look at in the future. I see another lot to the north of this property, and I can't really tell from the diagram whether it's a building or it's a trailer or what is on it, but there is one more lot to the north, and then after that it becomes farmland. So in our official plan, I don't know whether we're looking at any future development in Ayton. I know it's a secondary settlement, but if there's any future development, then it maybe could happen to the north. So I'm really curious. I know we talked about over behind the west side, behind the arena, that we're looking at maybe someday there should be something done with an extra street there to create some extra lots. I think this is just another one that would allow for extra development in the area. So I'm just throwing that out there. If our director's on, maybe he could comment. Maybe our planner would like to comment on it, but it just speaks to why we wouldn't put in some kind of street. And I'm not talking, sidewalks, curbs, the whole bit, but just some kind of proper access, especially with fire and services. So I'd just like to throw that out there for maybe staff would like to comment.
Well, thank you, Member Hutchinson. I just want to let you know I've acknowledged you, Member Townsend, but I am going to go to Planner Spencer for a response. Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. This particular property is in the middle of a property that was dealt with by committee last December with respect to their ability to have access again on this unopened and unmaintained portion of this road. The other property to the north of this property does have access without going through Helena Street. And there is no reason I would see that the municipality would want to undertake to open an unopened and unmaintained municipal road. It would involve a cul-de-sac. It would involve things that are going to be through expropriation. It's not in the best interest of the municipality to expend those funds to have the ability to open this road for one property when the property just north of them will have access to another road that is not necessarily unopened and unmaintained. So I hope that answers your question, but I'm free to
Member Hutchinson, do you have a follow-up?
Well, just, okay, I didn't understand. I didn't realize that the other property to the north had access, I guess, coming in off Augusta Street, sounds like. Yeah, I guess my only concern would be that we're now going to have possibly a couple of newer houses back in this street. They're going to resume responsibility. I'd hate to think that someday if we ever had a fire that there'd be an issue just because we couldn't get in there because it wasn't plowed properly or whatever. I just think, it's something that we should maybe look at. There is a roadway there now. I don't think it would take a whole lot to change it. But anyways, that's something that our director would have to speak to in the future, I guess. But that's fine. I'm okay with if it's sort of same type of conditions, the other property owners there, that they're going to be able to maintain it and have access. I guess they'd have to have some shared agreement. I guess that's how that would work. I'm not sure. So I'll leave it there.
I am going to go to Planner Spencer for a response because it sounded more like a question than a comment. So Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So the non-service agreement does have the property owner assuming full liability for those purposes. If I can put it into common terms to understand what that means, it's no different than someone having a driveway on a farm and what that looks like. So essentially, they're just acknowledging that we are not giving them services that would be required, such as like MTO or a county road or a municipal road. So they are fully acknowledging that they understand that in the event of an emergency, the onus really is on them to have proper access. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up, Member Hutchinson. Okay, well, thank you. And that takes me to Member Townsend. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar concern about access, but from a slightly different direction. I'm not sure if the landowner to the south of the property we're referring to has a agreement of a non-service agreement with the municipality, but irrespectively, if they do not maintain their access, it could in fact impede the current one. So if there isn't one, I'm suggesting perhaps there should be. And if there is one, I'm suggesting it should be somehow linked to the new one so that there is a joint understanding that that link is there and it needs to be addressed. So again, I wonder if Planner Spencer could address that situation, please.
Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. There is definitely an agreement with the property to the south, and what you're suggesting, based on what I'm hearing from you, Councillor Townsend, is that what you're requiring is that they would have to purchase the municipal road, and there would have to be right of ways allocated to the two properties, which is not a process that has been absolutely involved in this at this point in time. The non-service agreement is an easier process with respect to them understanding those agreements with respect to maintenance are on their own accord and not the responsibility of the municipality, and they will need to determine that for themselves, whether that means that the neighbor is not doing exactly what they said. That's a property dispute and not the involvement of a municipality. And I suggest that that should be the long-term perspective at this point in time for that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Follow up, Member Townsend.
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. I did not mean to imply or suggest that anyone had to buy any property. I'm just concerned that what I'm now going to call the middle property is kind of stuck, because if the first property off of Helena Street doesn't abide by to the non-service agreement, then the price could be paid by the second property. And I'm not sure how that gets addressed.
Well, I'll refer to Planner Spencer, because again, I'm taking that as a question. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. Again, that's a property owner component, non-service agreement. The development of every property is going to have to, in that particular portion of Helena Street, is going to have to understand and abide. And these agreements are registered on title. So not just the current property owners in a handshake agreement, registered on title for future property owners to understand that this is the way. And it's essentially, as I said before, clearing the laneway. And if one person does not want to participate, the other person may have to be the brunt of it. This is the unfortunate component of allowing development on unopened and unmaintained municipal roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Any additional comments or questions, Member Townsend?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from any of the other committee members before we turn this to the public? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to 7.4.2, and this is public comments. Again, there's two parts to this part of the public meeting. First one is to speak in favor of the application, and when we've completed that, then we'll go to the public to speak, or to have anybody that would like to speak in opposition of it. I'm going to ask Supervisor Hewlett to please advise on how members of the public can participate, and also to let me know, or let us know, I apologize, if there is anybody that has sent in correspondence, or you have anybody in chat. Supervisor Hewlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public wishing to participate during this period may do so in one of two ways. The first being, if you have joined us over the phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand. That will notify us that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if you have raised your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. The second option for members of the public who have joined us, using the online meeting software, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, either stating that you would like to speak or what you would like read for the record. At this time, Mr. Chair, taking a quick review of the dashboard, I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak, nor have I received any correspondence related to this application.
Thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. That'll take us to the second portion of the public meeting, and that is for anybody who'd like to speak in opposition. Again, Supervisor Hewlett has debriefed us all on how you can participate, and I'm going to ask if you received any correspondence or you have anyone in chat. Supervisor Hewlett.
I have not received any correspondence, nor am I seeing any members of the public wishing to speak at this point.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. We will move on to 7.5, and that's the decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? I'd be looking for a move or a recommendation, please. Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
I move to accept the application as long as we have the non-service agreement included.
Okay, thank you. And I will acknowledge Member Townsend's hand. Go ahead, Member Townsend.
I would second that motion with the same condition. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will go to Clerk Scharbeck, obviously with the recommendation from the committee members.
You, Chair Hutchinson, moved by Member Hutchinson and seconded by Member Townsend. That West Grey Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application number A14 2021 Piercy for the reasons set out in the planner's report and conditional on a non-service agreement being entered into with the municipality.
Thank you, Clerk Sherbeck. Comments or questions from the committee members on the recommendation? Seeing none, we'll call the motion. All those in favor, if you can please raise your hand. I see 3 members in favor, and we will ask for anyone opposed, please. And I see 1 member opposed, and that is motion carried on a 3-1. And we will go to 7.6. Clerk Sharbeck, what would be the next steps, please?
To Chair, the next steps for the applicant are to proceed with that non-service agreement, and that will be addressed through West Grey Council, not the Committee of Adjustment. Once that agreement is in place and the 20-day appeal period is passed for the minor variance, then they're free to proceed with the building permit process.
Thank you, Clerk Sharbeck. It takes us to item number 8 on the agenda, minor variance application number A15 2021, Slabosky. I have 8.1, application number A. Oh, I didn't change that one. Excuse me 1 second, please. A15 2021, Slabosky. 8.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation, as well as 8.3, including the written comments for 8.3.1. Thank you. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, it's that the committee received Planner Spencer's report and the recommendation that A15 2021 and the recommendation for approval of the minor variance, and further that a non-service agreement is approved by council in order for the landowner to assume complete liability for the use of an unopened and unmaintained road allowance. Written notice of the application and electronic hearing was sent to all property owners with 120 meters of the subject lands, and notice was posted on site in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose and effect of the application is to vary the provisions of subsection 6.10 to permit the development on an unopened and unmaintained municipal road, the effect of which will permit the construction of a new single detached dwelling unit on an existing lot of record. The lands are legally identified as part lot 102, concession 3, southwest of the Toronto-Sydenham Road, the geographic township of Glenelg. The property is located southwest of Grey Road 12 and the Westback line. The applicant is requesting relief in order of the form of a minor variance to permit the construction of a single detached dwelling unit. The absence of direct frontage and open access to an open and maintained municipal road is of the issue. A registered right-of-way is not considered direct access under the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw. Comments have been provided by the County of Grey and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No concerns were identified by any commenting agencies or the public, despite the comments to verify that actual legal right-of-way access is registered on title to the property. This has been confirmed by planning staff prior to the processing of the application. The intent of provision 6.10 is to ensure that development occurs in locations where safe access can be ensured along a roadway that is maintained to an acceptable standard for the use of municipal equipment and emergency services. Although staff are generally not supportive of this type of development, provided a non-service agreement is required, planning staff are satisfied that this application can be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. That moves us to 8.4, verbal comments. 8.4.1 is committee members. Committee comments. Committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments that you may have before we turn the application to the public. Is there any members of the committee that have a comment or a question at this time? Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I see this member Hutchinson here. I see this property being something similar to the one that we just passed, in that we're allowing people to access through a right of way or an easement or an unopened road allowance to properties. I know staff, in particular fire, aren't real keen on this, but given in this situation, we already have property back there, which to me, this is really just a long laneway. And now we have another property accessing off the same laneway. So I guess the only thing is, we have to be careful, I guess, in terms of how much of this we allow to happen. And we obviously need to take every situation differently and to look at them, because we have other people, I think, come forward on situations like this. I don't want to stifle development, because I think it's great that we're building new houses. But again, we have to keep in mind that fire and police and so on have to be able to access these properties. And there are some liability issues associated with them. So I guess I'm not really asking questions so much as making a statement that I'm in favor, but it is one of those situations where hopefully we're not getting into a slippery slope, put it that way.
Thank you, Member Hutchison. I will take that as comments only, and you were not looking for a response. Is there any other comments or questions from the committee members regarding this application? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to 8.4.2, and this is public comments. Again, there's two parts to this portion of the public meeting. First one is to speak in favor of the application, and when we've completed that, we'll follow up with anybody who'd like to speak in opposition of it. I'm going to ask Supervisor Hewlett to please provide information to the public on how they can participate, and if you could let us know if anyone is in the chat or you received any correspondence to speak in favor of the application. Supervisor Hewlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public wishing to speak during this portion of the meeting may do so in one of two ways. The first being, if you have joined us using the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if you have raised your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. The second option for members of the public who have joined us using the online meeting software, you can send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, either stating that you would like to speak or stating what you would like read for the record. At this time, Mr. Chair, taking a quick review of the dashboard, I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak at this point, nor have I received any correspondence.
Thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. All right, that'll take us to the second portion of this, and this would open it up to anybody who would like to speak in opposition or is against this application. Again, Supervisor Hewlett has read out how we can all participate, and I'm going to ask if there's anyone in the chat room or if you received any correspondence.
Again, Mr. Chair, taking a quick review of the dashboard, I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak at this point, nor have I received any correspondence.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. We're moving on to 8.5, and that's a decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? I'd be looking for a mover or to put a recommendation forward. Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the West Grey Committee of Adjustment. Sorry, did you say something, Mr. Chair?
Sorry, I did not, and I will turn my mic off in case there's a little background.
Oh, okay. Yes, Member Townsend, I'd like to move the West Grey Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application number A15-2021, Silvosky, for the reasons set out in the planner's report.
Thank you, Member Townsend. I'll be looking for a seconder for this recommendation. Member Hutchison, go ahead, please.
Member Hutchison, I second the application.
Thank you, and I'll try to keep my mic turned off there, Member Townsend, because there is a little back feed. Clerk Sharbeck, could you please read the recommendation?
Yes, through you, Chair. Just to clarify, was this the same intention as the previous minor variance with the non-service agreement?
I'll go to both to the mover first, which is Member Townsend. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the planner's report did not have that condition in the previous one, but the report does have it this time, that there has to be a non-service agreement approved by council. So there's no
Okay.
need to add it to the motion, I believe.
And I'll go to the seconder, Member Hutchinson.
Well, I'm just reading on the recommendation by the planner, 8.2. It does suggest a non-service agreement is approved by council. And it also shows for 7.2 that they did mention the non-service agreement. So I think they're both in there. But whether we want to have that in this motion or whether that's the planner's recommendation. So maybe we should have it in our decision also, should we?
Sorry, through you, Chair, if you wanted included on the decision sheet, then that does make it clear that it's the applicant's responsibility to get that non-service agreement before council. It would be the same as the one that you moved for the previous one. So with the recommendations set out in the planner's report for the reasons and conditions, conditional on a non-service agreement.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I do acknowledge you, Member Townsend, but Member Hudson, you do have the floor. Go ahead, please. And thank you for your response, Clerk Sherbeck.
Okay. Sorry, I would like to see that in the report or in the recommendation, yes.
Okay, and I'll go back to the mover, Member Townsend.
Yes, I don't see it there. That's a better way to do it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Member Townsend, or, because I know you had your hand up, so, okay, thank you. I am going to go back to Clerk Sherbeck just for clarification, and I will have the recommendation read one more time, just so we're all clear, please. Thank you.
Thank you through you, Chair Hutchinson. The recommendation, the resolution moved by Member Townsend and seconded by Member Hutchinson, is that West Grey Committee of Adjustment hereby approves minor variance application number A15-2021 Slabowski for the reasons set out in the planner's report and conditional on a non-service agreement being entered into with the Municipality of West Grey.
Thank you, Clerk Sherbeck. Comments or questions from the committee members regarding the recommendation? Seeing none, we'll call to vote. All those in favor, if you could please raise your hand. I see 3 members of the committee are in favor, and we will ask for any members that are opposed. I see 1 member opposed. We have a vote of 3 to 1. That motion is carried. And we go to item number 8.6. Clerk Sherbeck, what would be the next steps, please?
Through you, Chair, the next step for the applicant is to proceed with a non-service agreement with Council of the Municipality of West Grey. Once they have that non-service agreement in place and the 20-day appeal period has passed for the minor variance decision, then they're ready to go and proceed with their building permit.
Thank you, Clerk Sherbeck. Okay, flip the page here. That moves us to item number 9, consent to sever application number B07-2021 and Winya. And if I have announced or pronounced that wrong, I apologize. Item 9.1, application number B07-2021, again Winya, and it takes us to 9.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation as well as 9.3, including your comments received with 9.3.1, 9.3.2, including as well 9.3.3. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is that committee receive Planner Spencer's report and the recommendation for approval of application B07-2021 be approved, subject to the following conditions: the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, if applicable, payment of the zoning bylaw amendment fee, approval of a zoning bylaw amendment for the severed and retained parcels, payment of the parkland dedication fee for the newly created lot, and finally, payment and receipt of an entrance permit for the newly created parcel. Written notice of this application and electronic hearing was sent to all property owners with 120 meters of the subject lands, and notice was posted on site in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose and effect of the application is to sever 2.12 hectares of residential land and retain 16.9 hectares of a residential lot, the effect of which will create a new residential parcel and retain a rural parcel. The subject lands are identified municipally as 211805 Baseline Road and legally identified as lots 45 and 46, concession 3, west of the Garifraxa Road in the geographic township of Normanby. The property is designated as rural and hazard within the County of Grey official plan. The county plan further identifies significant woodlands in various locations on the subject lands. The lands are considered farmland, but do not contain any farm outbuildings at this time. The provincial policy statement 2020 states that the intent of rural lands is to preserve them for agricultural purposes and the role they play in the province's economy. Staff are satisfied that the use of the lands through this application are consistent with the provincial policy statement and maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan as well. The subject lands are zoned A2 and natural environment, rural and natural environment, which residential uses are permitted in the A2 zone. New structures are not permitted within the NE zone. Based on the information provided by the applicants, proposed lot creation would be entirely within the A2 zone. Planning staff will note that the provisions of the zoning bylaw related to minimum lot area of 20 hectares will not be met by either the severed or retained parcel, and a zoning bylaw amendment will also be required as a condition of provisional consent. Comments were provided by the County of Grey and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No concerns were provided by commenting agencies. One notice of concern has been noted by a neighboring resident. Planning staff are satisfied with the proposed lot creation in that it is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and generally maintains the intent and purpose of the municipality's zoning bylaw. I'm happy to clarify any questions that anyone has, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Moves us to 9.4, verbal comments. 9.4.1, committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions, to provide any comments you may have before we turn the application to the public. Is there any comments or questions from committee members? And I do see Member Townsend, and I acknowledge Member Robinson. Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed the application has B05 2021 as an indicator, and I realize that might be a typo. The thing that concerns me is the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority also uses the same application number in their response, and the planner's report has B07, which it sounds like that is the correct number, and I'm wondering how we correct that record so that someone coming back later can see that that trail or that consistency is there. So I wonder if Madam Spencer can respond to that, please.
Planner Spencer, is this if you could respond, it's just a housekeeping item, please?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. It is a housekeeping item and it will be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, and good eye there, Member Townsend. Any follow-up, sir?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will go to Member Robinson. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for clarity, Planner Spencer, was there correspondence received? Was it in favor or in opposition? And what's the context of that, if this is the appropriate time to ask that question? Thank you.
Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the correspondence received was, from what I can understand from the correspondence, was in opposition.
The floor is still yours, Member Robinson.
So there was no context of that, just that it identified in opposition?
Planner Spencer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct, Mayor Robinson.
Thank you very much.
Member Hutchinson, go ahead, please.
Member Hudson. Yeah, I'm just curious about the shape of the lot, because as the severed part has a house on it. I'm just curious about the front sort of northwest corner of 80 meters by 100 meters. Why is that sectioned off? Why is it such an irregular shaped parcel? Is it something to do with the hazard land, or what? I'm not understand why that wouldn't be all included within this severed parcel.
Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, The lot, it necessarily, the configuration is not generally what would be supported by municipal staff. If you could see the overlay of significant features on the property, you could understand why and how that line has been created. Generally, staff would not be supportive of lot lines that are not very secular in terms of leniency, abounding by lot lines that were pre-existing by a Crown survey. This is a little bit of an exception, not necessarily to the perfection of what planning staff would appreciate, but that is the reason. There's some significant features that need to be acknowledged.
Follow up, Member Hutchinson?
Okay, yeah, yeah, I'm just curious why it happened that way. I didn't notice it. I did drive by this property and I see the house there. It makes sense that, you could sever off a section and retain whether it's it says agricultural, but that's even questionable, I think. But yeah, I'm curious about that, but obviously it's not something I don't think we can correct. I guess we could refuse it, but then that doesn't really resolve that piece that's still in the corner, which I'm not even sure if that piece that's not even part of the original plan, or if it's not even part of the retained property, right? It belongs to other property owners. Is that correct?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. It really is based on the original Crown survey. This is not, as I said before, not a lot size that we would typically, not size, but irregularity that we would typically complement. But there are features within the Grey County GIS site that you will be able to see that denote there's a reason technically on the ground why the lot lines are designed the way they are in this particular circumstance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've gone through first-time speakers. Is there any second-time speakers on this application from the committee members? Before I turn it to the public? Seeing none, we will move on to 9.4.2, public comments. Again, there is two parts to this portion of the public meeting. First one is to speak in favor of the application, and that will be followed by anybody who'd like to speak or against or is opposed to the application. Supervisor Hewitt, please advise on how members of the public can participate, and advise if you've received any requests from the public to speak in favor or have received anything in chat. Supervisor Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public wishing to participate in this period may do so in one of two ways. The first being, if you have joined us over the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. This will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if you've raised your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. The second option for members of the public who have joined us using the online meeting software, you can simply send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, either stating that you would like to speak or what you would like to have read for the record. Just taking a quick review of the dashboard, Mr. Chair, I am not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak at this time, nor have I received any correspondence.
Thank you, Supervisor Hewitt. Again, we will go to the second portion of the public, and that would be to anybody who would like to speak in opposition. Again, Supervisor Hewlett has explained on how you can participate, and I will go back to Supervisor Hewlett to see if we received any correspondence or we have anybody sitting in chat. Supervisor Hewlett.
The same as before, Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak at this point, nor have I received any correspondence.
Okay. Thank you. We are going to continue with this for anybody that's listening or any of the committee members. We do, with the Planning Act, my understanding is we do need to ask for in favor followed by opposition, so we will stick with that formula. That takes us to 9.5, and that's decision by the committee. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? And I see Member Hutchinson's hand up. Go ahead.
Member Hudson, if I could ask one more question before I make a motion. Under the county planning report, it talks about prior to a decision on this application, it shall be ensured that the supportive documents are received from Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority and that MDS can be met. I don't see a Saugeen Valley Conservation report, and I don't think it was mentioned. And I'm not sure about the MDS. Did I miss that, or is that something that's outstanding?
Okay, I'll go to Planner Spencer for this before we do read the recommendation or get a motion on the floor. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, minimum distance separation calculations, quote unquote, MDS, are conducted by staff internally for all applications with respect to the guidance of the provincial policy statement. Those have been done. And with respect to the application at hand, there were no concerns from a staff level after conducting those calculations. With respect to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, comments have been received. And based on the application at hand, there are no concerns that have been involved. They were not provided as part of the agenda, and I apologize for that, but they were received after the agenda was published. If you have any further questions or concerns, I'm happy to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Member Hutchinson, follow up.
No, that's fine. As long as we receive the comments and they're positive, as the county had suggested, then I'm okay with that. Thank you. If I may, I'll make a recommendation that the committee approves the severance application B072021 for the reasons outlined by our planner.
Thank you, Member Hutchinson. I will be looking for a seconder, and I see Member Robinson's hand up. Go ahead, Member Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is Member Robinson. I will second the motion, but I'm wondering if the mover would also include subject to the following conditions, of which there are 3 that are outlined in the report.
I will go to the mover for that before we ask Clerk Sherbick to read it. Member Hutchinson?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Member Robinson?
No, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to Clerk Sherbick to please read the recommendation. If you need a moment to capture that, I appreciate that. But if you could read the recommendation when you're ready, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Moved by Member Hutchinson and seconded by Member Robinson. That Committee of Adjustment hereby approves severance application number B07-2021 Winya for the reasons and with the conditions as set out in the planner's report. And just for clarification with the committee, the conditions will be listed very clearly on the decision sheet. That is our formal recording of the decision.
Thank you, Clerk Sherbick. And I will go to the committee members before we call the motions. Any comments or questions on the recommendation before us? Okay, so we'll call the vote. We're looking for anyone in favor. All committee members, please raise your hand. I see all members of the committee are in favor of it. That'd be none opposed, and that motion would be carried. That takes us to item 9.6, next steps. And again, Clerk Sherbick, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The next steps are for the applicant to start working through those conditions. They have 12 months to complete the conditions, after which time the provisional consent will lapse if they do not complete the conditions in that time. So there is an appeal period, and they have 12 months to complete their conditions as set out in the decision sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Sherbick. Okay, item number 10, consent to sever application number B09-2021, Weller. Item 10.1, application number B09-2021, Weller. 10.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation as well as 10.3 and written comments received, including 10.3.1, 10.3.2, as well as 10.3.3. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is that the committee receive Planner Spencer's report with the recommendation that application B09-2021 be approved subject to the following conditions. Would be the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, if applicable, payment of the zoning bylaw amendment fee, approval of a zoning bylaw amendment for the severed and retained parcels, payment of the parkland dedication fee, for the newly created lot, that the retained lands merge with the lands to the west, and payment and receipt of an entrance permit for the newly created parcel. Written notice of the application and electronic hearing was sent to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. Notice was also posted on site in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose and effect of this application is to sever a 2.8 hectare residential parcel and add 25.2 hectares to the property west of the subject lands. The subject lands are municipally identified as 30346 Concession 2 SDR and legally identified as Lot 57 Concession 2 in the geographic township of Bentic. The severed lands would have approximately 147 meters of frontage and will have an approximate depth of 1,525 meters to be added to the lands to the west. The property is designated as rural, hazard, and provincially significant wetlands within the County of Grey official plan. The county plan further identifies significant woodlands and an aggregate resource on the subject lands. The lands are considered farmland and currently contain a single detached dwelling unit, various outbuildings, and a livestock facility. The existing structures will be entirely contained within the severed parcel. The provincial policy statement states that the intent of rural lands is to preserve them for agricultural purposes and the role they play in the province's economy. Planning staff are satisfied that the use of the lands through this application are consistent with PPS in this regard. The county official plan speaks to the density permitted for severance of rural lands. In this case, the retained parcel will be required to merge with the adjacent lands to the west, maintaining the density policies of the county official plan. Minimum distance separation has been reviewed as required as part of the application process, and planning staff are satisfied that MDS has been met and maintained from the adjacent livestock facility. The subject lands are zoned A2 rural, natural environment NE, and natural environment 2 NE2. Residential uses are permitted in the A2 zone. New structures are not permitted within the NE and NE2 zones. The existing structure on the subject lands is entirely located within the A2 zone and are proposed to remain at this time. The proposed lot creation will create an undersized severed parcel, which will be required to be recognized through a zoning bylaw amendment. The severed lands also contain a livestock facility, although it has not been used for this purpose for 15 years. The barn will be required to be rezoned for the purposes of dry storage only, as the use of the structure for livestock in future will not meet the minimum distance separation requirements with the newly created lot size. Comments have been provided by the County of Grey, in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority and Hydro One. No concerns were provided by commenting agencies, provided the retained lot merges with the adjacent lands. Hydro One did note that the placement of permanent structures or facilities within the hydro easement is not permitted. In general, planning staff are satisfied that the proposed lot creation is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the County of Grey official plan, and generally maintains the intent and purpose of the municipality's zoning bylaw. I'm happy to clarify anything further. Thank you.
Thank you for the detailed report there, Planner Spencer. And we will go to 10.4, verbal comments. 10.4.1, committee comments. Committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments you may have before we turn the application to the public. So if you could please raise your hand. I'll be taking first-time speakers. I see Member Townsend followed by Member Hutchinson. Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed in the recommendation from the planner that the requirement for a entrance permit is not included, but was stated. I'm assuming that should be a condition of approval should we committee choose to go that route. Can you confirm that, Planner Spencer?
Planner Spencer, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend, and through you, Mr. Chair. If this is going to be a merged lot, which is a condition of approval, it's not necessary for them to obtain anything other than a farm access permit in their own right. So it's not necessarily a definite condition that needs to be recognized through provisional consent.
Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you for the clarification, Planner Spencer. No other questions.
Okay, thank you. Member Townsend, or Hutchins, I apologize. Member Hutchinson, you did have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Member Hutchison. So I'm pleased to see that with the severance that the existing buildings are going to be maintained and hopefully probably be rental or future housing, whatever. And I'm also glad to see that the barn is going to be used for dry storage. So rather than taking down, because as you know, we're trying to preserve as many barns as we can, just because it's part of our natural heritage. So it's good to see that. I do have a question with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Report. It says near the end of the report, it's a statement, SVCA staff recommend to the municipal or county that a zoning bylaw amendment or site plan control agreement be implemented to ensure the above natural heritage recommendations are carried out. And it has to do with the heritage land and natural hazard land. Maybe this planner wants to speak to that.
Planner Spencer, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the comments are very valid. In this case, my choice was not to make an extenuation on that point because the lands are merging. It's not a technically new lot creation with a new residential parcel. I appreciate their concerns, but I think in this case, we've covered the perspective, the ability for a new residential dwelling unit to be created on this parcel where there are natural heritage concerns. So the merger of those two lots rectifies the issue in my perspective. Thank you.
Right. If I may, Chair.
Go ahead, Member Hutchison.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like they're looking to plan to build or anything there. It's just preserving what's there and maybe taking down some of the older buildings and sheds. So yeah, I agree that I don't see the need for a site plan control at this time. I don't think so. Thank you. I'm in favor of that.
Okay, thank you, Member Hutchison. Any follow-up? First time speakers, go ahead, please. Anyone? I'll be looking for second time speakers from the committee then. Seeing no hands, I'm going to go to the public portion now, and this will close the committee comments. It takes us to 10.4.2 public comments. Again, there's two parts to this portion of the public meeting. First one is to speak in favor of the application, to be followed by anyone that would like to speak opposed or is against the application. Supervisor Hewitt, please advise on how members of the public can participate and advise if you received any request from the public to speak in favor of the application or have anyone in the chat room. Supervisor Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public wishing to speak during this portion may do so in one of two ways. The first being if you have joined us using the phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand. That will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if you have raised your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. The second option for members of the public who have joined us using the online meeting software, you can simply send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, either stating that you would like to speak or stating what you would like read for the record. At this time, Mr. Chair, I do have one chat message, but just bear with me one moment. They're not stating whether they would, whether it's in favor or opposition.
Absolutely. Take your time, Supervisor Hewitt. Just gonna wait for Supervisor Hewitt to get a confirmation on the chat. Everyone just stand by for one moment, please.
Mr. Chair, if I may, it appears as though this chat message is more giving clarification to the item at hand. It's not in favor or in opposition.
Is it something you would like to share with us, or would they like it shared, or like it came in on chat?
Yes, it did.
Do you want to possibly just, well, could you, I think we should, because it is a public meeting, we should know where it came from and maybe just share it with us.
Okay, absolutely.
Please and thank you.
So this chat message comes from the individual, their screen name is AI. I would like to clarify that the lot in question is lot 57 of concession 3, not concession 2, as noted. I spoke with planner Spencer about this previously, and about it being corrected, but I see as that it has not been amended.
Okay, and for the public record, I do see AI, as we're identifying, is on the call. And if you wouldn't mind just sending your name for the record, full name to Supervisor Hewlett. And I will go to Planner Spencer to address the question that's before us. Again, we appreciate, for the record, your full name sent to Supervisor Hewlett. Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you, and you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. It is, as Supervisor Hewlett has suggested, it is actually just an error in miscommunication. My apologies, but it's certainly not for that property, and I have spoken to the property owner in question, concerned that their property has been posted in that manner. The sign was not posted on that property. It's just a miscommunication. My apologies.
Okay, thank you, Planner Spencer. And Supervisor Hewlett, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, the individual who had sent me the chat message, their name is Alexandra, and I believe the last name is Bottenson.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further or follow-up? I believe Planner Spencer has addressed the question or the concern. And thank you very much for putting your name into the forward for the public record. So do you have anything else there for speaking in favor of it at this time there, Supervisor Hewlett?
No, Mr. Chair, that is all.
Thank you. So we will move on, and we will go to this portion of the meeting where any of the members of the public that would like to speak in opposition or as opposed to this application. Again, Supervisor Hewlett has shared with us how you can participate, and I will go to Supervisor Hewlett to see if there's anybody in chat or if you've received any correspondence. Again, Supervisor Hewlett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I've not received any correspondence, nor am I seeing any member of the public wishing to speak.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Hewlett. And this closes our verbal comments section, and we'll go to 10.5, decision by the committee. I'll be looking for a direction from the committee members on what direction they'd like to take with this application. So I'll be looking for a mover or seconder and a recommendation, please. Member Townsend, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves severance application number B09-2020 Weller for the reasons and with the conditions as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you, Member Townsend. I'd be looking for a seconder for this recommendation. Member Hutchinson, go ahead.
Member Hutchinson, yes, I second that motion.
Thank you. I'm going to refer to Clerk Scharbeck. If you could please read the recommendation for us, please.
Certainly. Through you, Chair, the recommendation moved by Member Townsend, seconded by Member Hutchinson, is that Committee of Adjustment hereby approves severance application number B09-2021 Weller for the reasons and with the conditions as set out in the planner's report.
Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. Comments or questions from the committee members on the recommendation before we call the vote? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, if you could please raise your hand. I see all members of the committee are in favor of this recommendation. None opposed. This motion is carried. Go back to 10.6. Once again, Clerk Scharbeck, please, for the next steps.
Through you, Chair Hutchinson. Next steps for the applicant is to get through that appeal period, of course, and from the date of the decision, they have 12 months to complete their conditions.
Thank you, Clerk Scharbeck. Okay, moving on, we are on item number 11, consent to sever application number B11-2021, JT Excavating. Item 11.1, application number B11-2021, JT Excavating. 11.2, Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, please read the recommendation as well as 11.3 written comments received, including 11.3.1, 11.3.2, 11.3.3, and finally 11.3.4. Planner Spencer, the floor is yours. Planner Spencer.
My apologies. I was experiencing technical difficulties. I will proceed on the direction, Mr. Chair. And the application B11-2021 for JT Excavating is that the committee receive Planner Spencer's report and the recommendation that application B11-2020 be approved, subject to the following conditions: the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, if applicable, the payment of the parkland dedication fee for the newly created lot, and that a floodplain assessment is provided by the applicant. And finally, the payment and receipt of an entrance permit for the newly created parcel.
Planner Spencer, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we did miss, maybe you could just recap your last paragraph, because I didn't hear that at all. You had some technical technical difficulties. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but please go back.
Nope. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that committee receive Planner Spencer's report with the recommendation that application B11-2021 be approved, subject to the following conditions. That would be the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, if applicable, payment of the parkland dedication fee for the newly created lot, and that a floodplain assessment is provided by the applicant to ensure safe access to the satisfaction of the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority and the municipality, and finally, payment and receipt of an entrance permit for the newly created parcel. Written notice of the application and electronic hearing was sent to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, and notice was posted on site in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The purpose of this application is to sever 40 hectares of agricultural lands and retain 50 hectares of rural lands, the effect of which will create an agricultural parcel and retain a rural parcel. The subject lands are municipally identified as 382-367, concession 4, north of the Durham Road, and legally identified as Lot 29, concession 5, north of the Durham Road, in the geographic township of Bentic. The severed lands would have approximately 400 meters of frontage and will have an approximate depth of 1,000 meters. The property is designated as agricultural, rural, and hazard within the county official plan. The county plan further identifies significant woodlands on a portion of the subject lands. A creek is also located along the western property boundary, and the property is regulated in areas through the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. The 2020 provincial policy statement states that prime agricultural areas should be protected for the long-term use for agriculture. Lot creation in prime agricultural areas is very limited, which is consistent with the county official.
We've lost your audio there, Planner Spencer. Supervisor Hilliard, I'm wondering if you could send a text or a message to Planner Spencer that we've, I've lost all audio here anyway. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, it appears as though we have lost her audio. Just bear with me one moment. I will send her a message.
I just wonder maybe it would be better for Planner Spencer just to, for this little bit that's left with the technical difficulty, maybe to call in so that we can complete this part of the meeting. That's only a suggestion, so I will let you take care of that.
Absolutely. It appears as though she's fully been dropped from the meeting. Bear with me while I reach out.
We're just getting Planner Spencer back online here, whether it be through a phone or through the computer here, just for the public's knowledge. And we are in the middle of the presentation under 11.2 and including 11.3. So just once we get this technical problem corrected, then we'll get right back online with the meeting. Please stand by.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Planner Spencer has joined the waiting room. She is just getting connected into the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hewlett. It's still spinning for connecting, so. Planner Spencer, once you're back into the meeting, if you could just let us know that.
So thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I am here. I apologize for that interruption, but I'm not sure where you lost me, so you might want to advise where you can
Well,
hear.
I think what we'd like to do is, we did have 11.2. I think let's recap right for 11.3. The written comments, I think, would probably be a good spot to pick up, and that would be all of them. Please and thank you.
Okay, and thank you through you, Mr. Chair. So on the basis of comments, they were received by the County of Grey Planning and Development Department, the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and Hydro One. Concerns were provided by the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, which denoted that a floodplain assessment is required to ensure that safe access can be provided to the proposed building lot. Staff have further confirmed that the floodplain assessment can be made of a condition of consent, with a further caveat that the assessment must be to the approval of the municipality and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. This will provide the client with 12 months from the date of provisional approval to complete the necessary works. If unsuccessful, provisional approval will lapse. The applicant and their agent are aware of this component. Staff are generally satisfied with the proposed lot creation in that it is consistent with the provincial policy statement, county official plan, and generally maintains the intent and purpose of the municipality's zoning bylaw. Provided the floodplain assessment is added as a condition of provisional consent, staff have no further concerns in this regard. I will just remind committee that we're dealing with a severance application at hand today, and that is the extent of applications at heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Okay, we're at 11.4, verbal comments. 11.4.1, this is committee members. Committee members, this is your opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments that you may have before we turn the application to the public. And I will be looking for first-time speakers with any comments or questions. Committee members. And Member Hutchison, do you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Just a comment, question about the entrances and whatnot. As I looked at this property, I sort of saw three entrances. One is obviously the original parcel with the buildings on it. but there seemed to be one to the east side, and then there was one to the west side, closer to the bridge. And I wasn't sure, I wasn't sure which was the official entrance permit and which one was maybe it's a farm access, but it looks like there's some work going on in terms of clearing and logging and whatever else is happening there. But I was just curious about the three entrances.
Okay, good question. And Planner Spencer, please.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, it's a very qualified question, Councillor Hutchison, but that would be a farm entrance, which is very different than your typical entrance permit with a fire number for your actual access to a property with a dwelling unit. So it's a very valid question, but farm entrances are treated much differently than an actual access to identified property that may need to be accessed by emergency vehicles for a dwelling unit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you know that we have the planner loft company online, so maybe she wants to speak when the opportunity arises. Thank you.
That will be our public portion there when we go to the public there. Member Hutchison, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee before we close this portion of the meeting and go to the public portion of it? Okay, I do not see any. So that'll close that portion of the meeting. We're going to go to 11.4.2, members of the public. This is your opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments you may have before. Excuse me, I apologize. There's two parts to this portion of the meeting. First one is to speak in favor of the application, followed by anyone would like to speak in opposition of it. Again, Supervisor Hewlett, please advise on how members of the public can participate and advise if you've received any information on chat or any correspondence for members of the public that like to speak in favor of the application. Supervisor Hewlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public wishing to speak during this period of the meeting may do so in one of two ways. The first being, if you have joined us via the phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, if you have raised your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. For members of the public who have joined us using the online meeting software, you can simply send a chat message to myself, Cody Hewlett, Recreation Supervisor, stating either that you would like to speak or what you would like read for the record on your behalf. Mr. Chair, at this time, I have received one member of the public wishing to speak in favor of this application.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hewlett, and if you can let that member of the public in, if they could just state their name for the record. Would that be you, Ms. Loft?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So Christine Loft, and I'm acting on behalf of JT Excavating, the landowner of the property. So the proposal is to sever the 40-hectare agricultural parcel and to retain a 50-hectare rural parcel. It's designated a portion of rural and a portion of agricultural. There are existing structures and existing dwelling and accessory structures on the severed parcel. The retained parcel is vacant. We have identified a building envelope on the subject property. And so the proposal would be to sever the lots. We are utilizing the original lot line. So at one time, these were two separate parcels. And it were merged. They actually were three separate parcels in 1970, two of them merged, and then in 1980, the third parcel merged, which was just a result of the same landowner purchasing the adjacent parcels, and once they're placed in the same name, then those lands merged. So we are still severing on the original lot line. In terms of the comments received, we had reached out to the Conservation Authority prior to the planning application, so we have been aware of the study required. We are in the midst of obtaining quotes and working with the Conservation Authority and having the report scoped in terms of reference that they wish to see. So we are working away on that. We are confident that we can obtain the report within the time requirement as Ms. Spencer's identified. So we are proceeding with that immediately. and are satisfied that that's a condition. We have had an opportunity to review the other conditions as part of the proposed notice of decision, and we accept those conditions, and those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Loft. I'm not going to go offline here too much. Is there any comments or questions from the committee members to Ms. Loft? And we will be brief because, again, we're in the public portion, but I know Ms. Loft specializes in this. So, Member Hutchison, please go ahead.
Yeah, Member Hudson. So maybe, Ms. Loft, if you could clarify my question about the 3 entrances. I think I'm presuming the one to the east is just a farm entrance.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
That's through Member Hutchison. Yes, that is correct. It's a farm entrance, and the owner has been working with Public Works in terms of utilizing that entrance for the farm purposes. And the property is now fully cropped as well, so the access has been utilized more so now than previously.
Okay, and the question, Chair, is it makes a statement in there that there is a barn on the one parcel. I think it's on the retained parcel, an older barn in a field. I'm just curious. I didn't notice it. I wasn't sure what that referred to, but I would just like to point out that if there are any old barns that are in a condition that we could keep them, that would be worth looking at. But I mean, if it's dilapidated, then obviously it has to come down. But we're trying to preserve as many of our older barns as possible in the municipality.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? And thank you, Ms. Loft, for your presentation. Okay, we will move on to the second portion of the public meeting, and that would be anybody that'd like to speak in opposition to this application. Again, I'm going to go to Supervisor Hewlett. Supervisor Hewlett.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I have received one comment, or one member of the public, sorry, who would like to speak in opposition. They are EA Cuskany.
Okay, are they on phone or the audio?
They have joined us using the online system.
Online system? Okay, let us know when you can unmute them, and then I will ask the member of the public to please state their name for the record, and then the floor will be yours.
They are live.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, committee chair and members of the committee. My name's Alan Kuskany, and I've been a neighbor of the property for about 30 years. I own the property immediately to the south of the proposed development, and I'm also on the west side of the bridge, whereas the severance is taking place on the east side of the bridge. Having known the former landowner, Gord Hopkins, I found that he was a responsible and conscientious farmer who maintained the integrity of his 225 acres and farmed the area that was on the eastern half, the part that's proposed to be severed off. And he also maintained the balance of the property in woodland and in just in its natural setting. There was a couple of small fields on there, but there wasn't much development there. And I thought most appropriately so, because that area slopes down to the Saugeen River. The Saugeen bisects the property that is being addressed in today's application. So I'd like to address, first of all, what's in the application, and then I think more importantly, what isn't in the application. In the loft planning report, the first page of it, where it talks about the purpose of the application, it refers to the retained lot as comprising primarily farm fields with a creek running along the property. The proposed consent in section 5.2 refers to the retained parcel and talks about it being zoned rural and hazard. And it's saying that the proposed consent won't impact the surrounding rural area, and proposes a lot structure that is compatible with the agricultural and rural uses that already exist on the property. So whereas the size of the lot to be created and the size of the lot to be retained do appear on the surface to comply with both the requirements of the provincial policy and also West Grey's, there's something that that worries me a bit, and that is, again, if we refer back to the loft planning, rural lands and municipalities, they talk about the retained land as being primarily vacant. And I think it's important that we get a characterization of what's really going on, as opposed to what's simply mentioned in the planning proposal submitted by the applicant. They also, on page 6 of the report, say that no development or site alteration are proposed on lands identified as hazard. A building envelope exists outside of the hazard, and the entrance is existing, and an entrance permit has been recently issued. So going back to Council Members Hutchinson's question about the 3 entrances, the entrance that's on the west end of the property, I think goes far beyond what you would call necessary for farm entrance, because just being up there this past weekend, I noticed that it was the equivalent of a high quality county road. It's wide enough, and it's smooth enough, and it's got completely graveled and tamped gravel. So it's a serious road that would far exceed what a farmer would need to go in and out of his fields. So that brings me to the second part of my presentation, which is the Grey County's Planning and Development letter dated the 5th of June. On the first page, it refers to the western portion of the site being designated as an aggregate resource area. And that, again, right now, the committee takes the position that the retained lot appears to be vacant. Access to the retained lot would appear to be required via the hazard lands. And we've heard a submission by Ms. Loft that that they are conducting a study to make sure that that access road doesn't interfere with the valley lands or the environmentally sensitive area that that road is going to be going over. So I don't think I need to take more time by going through the Saugeen Valley's Conservation Area report, other than to point out on page 3 of the report that the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority are of the opinion that the proposed severance and development of the retained lot are not currently consistent with section 3.1 of the PPS and section 7.2 of the Grey County OP. And it mentions, I won't go into the details of each, but it mentions a number of concerns, including natural heritage, including significant woodlands, including significant valley lands, including the Grey County official plan. It talks about wildlife habitat. It talks about the Grey County official plan. And it also talks about the environmental impact study that may be required. Interestingly, in the definition of development in this report, they refer to section C, site grading, or section D, the temporary or permanent placing, dumping, or removal of any material originating on the site or elsewhere. So my concern is that the current owner will soon apply for an aggregate removal license from the Ministry of Natural Resources, and that this severance is only the first step in a general plan to try to extract as much value from the property as can be had. My own view of it, I've owned the property for 30 years. I'm getting ready to retire, and our plan was to retire up and settle on the property. We spend many weekends there. We spend a lot of the summer and quite a few weekends and weeks during the winter on the property. It's a recreational area. As you know, there are a lot of inner tubers that frequent the recreational trailer parks that are in the area, and they put the area to good use. And if the overall plan indeed does involve the extraction of aggregates, then I would be very opposed to the severance being granted on the grounds that it's only the first step of about 3 or 4 that we know that are coming. And the reason I say that is because of the quality of the road that's been put in on the west end, and also the comments that I read in the Committee of Adjustment report dated June the 14th, because there's a sentence here that caught my attention where it says the subject lands contain a swath of identified aggregate on lot 27. And then it says the location of the proposed lot creation is not anticipated to impact the ability for future aggregate extraction in this location. So to my mind, it's already being brought to the committee's attention that this may be the eventual plan for the property. Again, being up there this weekend and hearing a very loud sound, which sounded like gravel being either crushed or being washed over a sluice. It went on for a number of minutes. And looking at the property, there appear to be 2 large piles of gravel that I understand have been produced by the gravel that it has been found on the property, and that has been crushed by a portable crusher that's come in. So I'm just concerned that their actions are rushing far ahead of the permits that they've got, far ahead of the, I think, large impact that that kind of development would have on the fairly dense residential community that exists in the Saugeen Valley watershed, and in our area in particular. I'm also concerned in speaking to a couple of the neighbors that even though technically they may exist outside of the 120 meter required notice distance, there were people who lived directly across from the proposed severance that didn't receive any notice whatsoever of today's meeting or the proposed severance. And the owners immediately to my west also didn't get any notice, and my land is adjacent to those. But that's a technical issue I'm sure that the clerk can work out. So that's it in a nutshell. I would be prepared to withdraw my objection to the severance if we could obtain from the landowner an undertaking not to apply for an aggregate removal license. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kuski. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Planner Spencer for a response, and I am going to circle back for just to make sure that we have covered everything, and that will be a very brief circle back to you just to make sure that we've answered some of your concerns or your questions were confirmed. So we'll go to Planner Spencer. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I will state that the application at hand is purely for a severance, and based on the merits of that application only. The surmise to whether or not the proponent would pursue or may pursue an aggregate license is a different process entirely, which would also be involving the ministry, the county, ourselves as well. and all of the commenting agencies, and that would be a separate process in a public meeting. At this point in time, we're simply looking at the lot severance. With respect to the question regarding individuals not receiving notice, we have on file that those notices were sent out, whatever may or may not have happened. It's also on the website as well, and the notice is posted on the property. So we've done our over-fulfilled our requirements under the Planning Act. With respect to speculation, the property owner is free to do and choose what they will. With respect to the entrances in question, a farm entrance, implements in this day and age with respect to farm machinery are required to be quite large. It's not a simple tractor driving in. The implements are quite large, and those entrances may look very well, like they're very well used. And in this case, that is exactly what's going on, is that the cash cropping industry requires large farm implements, and that is why those entrances look the way they do. Speculation at this point is not for the committees at hand. I think at this point, the committee needs to determine if the severance is appropriate, as I've stated in my report, regardless of whether or not there's an aggregate resource located on the property. That is just primarily there, and you cannot remove that. We can't pick where aggregate is. Aggregate is where it is. So at this point, the only matter at hand here for committee to decide really is the severance of the property. And in question, if there is a further application for further alterations in terms of what they deem they would like to do with the property, that will come to council through the form of a zoning bylaw amendment or an official plan amendment, if that be the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Now, as I said, Mr. Kusi, I am going to come back to you, and simply that is because you had quite a extensive delivery there. I just want to make sure if there's any questions that you had in your discussion, if there's anything we have not answered or Planner Spencer hasn't. That's what I'm not after for more information. I want to make sure that we've answered the questions that you brought forward.
Yes, I appreciate the answer, and I realize that the application was only for the severance at this time. And I would think then that it wouldn't be a major undertaking to have the landowner provide a declaration that an aggregate license wouldn't be sought. And my submission is that it be made a condition of the permission for the severance.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I will go back to Planner Spencer for a response to that. I believe I had heard the answer already, but Planner Spencer, go ahead, please.
No, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, we don't have the ability through the Planning Act to obligate an individual to not apply for a change in land use in future. That's a separate process. And it's not the purview of the Committee of Adjustment at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Planner Spencer. Anything else, Ms. Kuzny, before I move on? I see there's another member of the public that has their hand up, so we got to keep going here because we do have a limit on the amount of time per item.
No, I appreciate the ability to have taken some of your time, and I appreciate your comments as well.
And we appreciate you participating in a public forum like this. This is the only way that we get things out in the open and we get things done properly. So
Excellent.
thank you very much. If I could ask you to mute yourself, put your phone on mute or your audio, and I'm going to go to Supervisor Hewlett. I do see another hand up. If you could help me with that, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct. There is an individual on using the phone line. The last three digits of their phone number, 559.
So we want to go ahead and unmute Supervisor Hewlett, and we will be asking for the person to state their name for the record. And they will have the mic as soon as you can get that done.
To the individual who have joined us over the phone, you may be receiving an audio prompt just saying that the host has asked to unmute you. If you could press *6 to unmute yourself, then you can speak. There you are, your phone line should be live.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please. You will need to state
Okay,
your name
thank
for the
you.
record, please.
Yep. My name is Joyce Hopkins. I am the daughter of the former property owner, Gord Hopkins. I do have a couple of questions. First, I'd like to say that I appreciate Mr. Krasnicki and his comments. A lot of them were quite spot on in terms of the use of the property and how it has been used and retained in its natural beauty, if you will. The two questions that I do have, and hopefully they can be answered quickly. I was speaking with someone else and they had indicated that in another municipality, there is a bylaw or an article in place as part of their planning act that requires that a landowner have owned the property for a minimum amount of time, for example, a year or 5 years before they can sever said property. Is that the case for West Grey?
So that will be your first question, and we will mark that down. Go ahead with your second question, and then we'll go to Planner Spencer to provide both questions, well, answers to both, if you have two.
Okay, yes. And the second question, you were speaking about there being an assessment done by the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and that they will be, I'm not completely versed on what their assessment includes, but I was wondering if it would be assessing for designated wetlands and such.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopkins. So just please stand by. I'm going to go to Planner Spencer, and we have two questions, Planner Spencer, if you could answer those, please.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what your reference is with respect to the Planning Act. That is a regulation throughout Ontario. And so I'm not sure what you're referring to with respect to the 1 year component of not being able to sever. If that's a different municipality, I can't speak to those effects, but I can only imagine that that's in their official plan. I would liken that it's probably not, and it's maybe just a policy. So I would like to correct those facts. There is nothing in place in the County of Grey, even in Bruce County, where you have to own a property for a year before you're allowed to expand on the property. That's absolutely not the case. Second to that effect, there's nothing in place that prevents farming. And so with respect to the insinuation of the entrances and all of those components from yourself and your counterpart, who's also speaking in opposition, those entrances are necessary and needed to farm the fields. And that is point blank, just quite frankly, the way it is. With respect to your second question, the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority comments on every application that we receive within and outside of settlement areas. And absolutely, their mandate is to review everything related to provincially significant wetlands, hazard lands, and anything outside of those, what we call adjacent lands. So they absolutely have reviewed the application. So the floodplain assessment, which I believe you're referring to, is to ensure that there's safe access and exit from the property in terms of an entrance, so that it does not flood over periods of time where we may have heavy rain or we may not have heavy rain. But we look at the 100-year floodplain as being the fundamental component to establish what's safe and what's not. There's a reason why houses are not built adjacent to hazard lands because of that component. It could be very dry for 10 years. It could be very dry for 30. And then 40 years later, your basement is full of water. So that's absolutely what the floodplain assessment will establish for the entrance to this property. If that floodplain assessment cannot establish that an entrance to this property can be granted, then this provisional consent, should committee decide to approve it, will lapse and they will not have a consent. And that will be the end of. And I will leave it to our chair to determine further if there's further clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Ms. Hopkins, did that answer your questions?
Yes, I believe it did. It does clarify what the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority assessment covers. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And
Planner
you're
Spencer.
and you are clear on the bylaws that you discussed. I think Planner Spencer answered that quite eloquently.
Yes, my understanding is that West Grey Municipality does not have any restrictions in place for the applications for severances
Okay.
based on time of ownership.
Okay. You have any further questions, or does that cover your two questions?
No, I think that covers it. Thank you,
Okay.
and thank you to the committee for your time.
Well, thank you for joining our public meeting today. So if I could get you to go, lower your hand, please, and put your phone on mute. And I'm going to go back to Supervisor Hewlett to see if we have any other members of the public wishing to participate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I have not received any correspondence, nor am I seeing any members of the public wishing to participate.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, we've had a great conversation around that one. It's one of the longer ones we've had, and that's always a good thing. That takes us to 11.5 is the decision. I'm looking for some direction from the committee on which way we'd like to go with this recommendation. I have Member Hutchinson. Go ahead, please.
Here, yes, I'd like to move we approve the severance. I have faith that the conservation of being involved, conservation authority being involved, in a planner, planner that's hired to look after this situation. I think the conservation authority is looking after the best interests of all involved, and I think for this part, I don't see any issues with the severance down the road, how that land gets used, and that's something you'll have to come back to council or the authorities at that time. So I just like to make a recommendation that we approve the application B09 2021. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. B11 2021 TJ Excavating for the reasons and the conditions set out in the planner's report.
Thank you, Member Hutchinson. I will be looking for a seconder for this recommendation. I see Member Townsend with your hand up. Are you looking to second this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am. Again, I'm wondering if the mover would be acceptable to have the additional requirement of the floodplain assessment requirements that the Planner Spencer had mentioned.
Please go ahead and we can add it, and I'll go back to the mover for this. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I would second the motion requesting that change.
Member Hutchinson?
Yeah, I'm just maybe our planner can speak to that. Do they need the flood plan assessment for the severance, or is that for future development?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, it's a condition of provisional consent that would be on the condition sheet. They do require this as a condition of consent.
Okay, I'm fine.
Back to Member Townsend.
Sorry, I didn't hear Member Hutchinson.
Member Hutchinson?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Then I will second it. I did have a question for the planner as well.
Okay, we are done our the committee. Is this, I will allow it this time. We've got to wrap up. We got to stay on the agenda. That's where I just want to make sure we're doing that. So go ahead, Member Townsend.
Thank you. I just want a direct clarification. Can the applicant go ahead and apply for removing the aggregate without the severance?
Planner Spencer?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. They have the absolute right to apply for any change on their property at this point in time, regardless of the severance. A change in land use would be required for a zoning bylaw amendment to remove the aggregate, which would involve a public process through council. That being said, let's understand that if someone applies for a zoning bylaw amendment, they cannot come back without the approval of council to apply for a minor variance. So we have to keep the processes clear. The severance is not predicating their intentions. The severance is a separate issue. If they would like to apply for a zoning bylaw amendment to remove aggregate or change it to a commercial use, that is on their purview and their ability to do so without the public being notified until that happens in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Does that answer your question, Member Townsend?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And I wanted it to be clear for the public as well.
That's fine. Yes, absolutely. All right, we do have a recommendation moved by Member Hutchison and seconded by Member Townsend. I'm going to get Clerk Sharbeck to read the recommendation before us, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Hutchinson. The resolution moved by Member Hutchinson and seconded by Member Townsend is that Committee of Adjustment hereby approves a severance application B11-2021 JT Excavating for the reasons and with the conditions set out in the planner's report, with the additional condition of a floodplain assessment being provided demonstrating safe access through the regional floodplain to the proposed building envelope on the retained parcel.
Thank you, Clerk Sharbeck. Comments or questions on the recommendation before us from the committee members? Seeing none, we'll call the motion. All those in favor, just signify by raising your hand. I see 4 members in favor, none opposed. That motion has carried. We'll go to item number 11.1.6 and back to Clerk Sharbeck to please provide the next steps. Clerk Sharbeck?
Through you, Chair. Our next meeting date is...
Oh, Clerk Sharbeck, we're just the next steps for the application on
I'm
11.
sorry.
That's okay, 11.6.
Sorry about that. Next steps is the applicant from the date of the decision has 12 months to complete their conditions and proceed with their development. Thank you. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Clerk Sharbeck. All right, well, how about we talk about item number 12 now? Next meeting, Clerk Sharbeck.
That would be great. Our next meeting scheduled is July 5th at 1 p.m. And we'll be sending out the notices and the agenda for that meeting soon.
Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to item number 13, adjournment. We'll be looking for a motion to adjourn from one of the committee members, please. Member Townsend, are you moving that?
Chair, yes, I will move that motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Member Townsend. I'm looking for a seconder to motion for adjourn, please. Member Robinson, are you seconding this motion?
Yes, Member Robinson, I am seconding.
Thank you, Member Robinson. All right, and I will have Clerk Sharbeck read the recommendation, please.
Through you, Chair Hutchinson, the recommendation moved by Member Townsend and seconded by Member Robinson is that Committee of Adjustment hereby closes this meeting at 3:20 p.m.
We'll call the motion. All those in favor to adjourn, please signify by raising your hand. I see all members are in favor. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Well, motion carried. Just want to say stay connected. Subscribe today to receive news and notices from our website, www.westgrey.com/subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Our West Grey. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you very much. That was a good meeting. It was lots of good correspondence today. Thank you. Take care and enjoy the sun. And Mayor Robinson, enjoy your afternoon at the farm.